What's poppin', y'all? Got another episode of Intellectual Stonerz. It's your host. I do interviews, man. Got a special guest here, Chris.
What's up with you guys? What's up? What's up? What's up?
Yep. So, hey, this is a different episode. We usually do like hip hop and sports and stuff like that, but today we're talking finances, man, the important stuff. So, just go ahead and kick it off, man. What's your specific job title?
Yeah. So specifically, I work. I'm a regional sales manager through a financial brokerage. Specifically, I manage about 25 insurance agents. And through our brokerage, we do insurance and financial services specifically. So we offer a wide variety of services, but specifically work with retirees. Specifically with insurance and financial needs.
Okay, definitely, man. So what's the difference between a traditional IRA and a Roth IRA? I'm not gonna lie, man. I don't know the difference. So
Yeah.
go ahead and break that down, man, for everybody that doesn't know.
Yeah, essentially just the tax advantages. With a traditional IRA, you get tax deductions on a year-to-year basis versus a Roth IRA. You don't get those tax deductions, but later in life, when you pull money out of the account, you don't pay tax on any of it. So the beauty of that is that essentially, when you have one account like a Roth IRA and you have $100,000, an example for that, you pull any of the money out, you're not going to pay any tax on that. Versus a traditional IRA, you have 100,000 in that, you're going to pay tax on all $100,000 that you pull out. So every dollar is taxable. Versus a Roth, they are not, right? And you try to break that down in the most simplest format, because there's a lot more to it than that. But essentially, the tax differences between the two, right? There's tax advantages of having an account that you can take where you don't pay any taxes on it. And then there's advantages to having a traditional where you get tax deductions on a year-to-year basis when you do invest in it. So, I tell people, it's best to probably have both, but essentially at the same time, it's important just to have one, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And to kind of simplify that too, an IRA is an individual retirement account. A Roth IRA is a Roth, individual retirement account. So they have the IRA in both of them. Just the tax differences between the two is going to be the differences.
Yeah,
But why you want one is essentially to make sure that you can wake up one day and have some money set aside, whether that's necessarily in the Roth account or the traditional IRA,
yeah,
making sure you can retire one day, which I think there's a huge education gap when it comes to that necessarily with, maybe young people or even some older people. I work with
yeah.
retirees and, day to day I sit down with them and, they didn't put as much money away or they didn't take advantage of the IRA or the Roth IRA or their 401k through their company. So
Yeah.
it puts them in a bad spot. So.
Hey, you didn't say it. I'm gonna say it, man. Black people.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
know what I'm
yeah.
saying?
It's a huge issue. It's
Yeah.
financial literacy, right? Within our communities, within our, our families, we're not taught those things. And I come across a lot of people that just don't take advantage of it. They're offered them, and they still don't take advantage of them, right? And unfortunately, yeah, it's a huge demographic within the, the minority communities that aren't taking advantage of them, which
Yeah.
it's unfortunate, right? And it's
Yeah.
putting them in a situation to only have to depend on Social Security, which is not a nice feeling going from working to retirement and realizing you only got X amount of dollars to live off, and that's the only thing that's going to be paying you every month.
Yeah.
So you need those retirement accounts to offset what you're used to make sure that you can still live the same lifestyle when you go to retirement, right?
Yeah.
A lot of us think for today and not later, and it's important to understand this is a lot of information, but just having a retirement account is important to make
Yeah.
sure that you have some freedom later down in life where you're not bound to the system as much as you were when you're in your working years.
Yeah. Exactly.
So yeah.
Exactly, man. Why not reap your benefits? Like,
And you're working, and I think that, like you said, a lot of people just don't understand how far, putting 50 to even $100 a month goes.
no, for sure.
I challenge everybody to educate themselves on compound interest and what that looks like over the years.
Hmm.
It's so important to understand, like what it looks like for you to invest $100 a month with, let's just say roughly a 7% return,
Yeah.
over a course of 30 years and what that looks like. There's calculators, and I suggest everybody that's listening to this to go online and and play with the calculators where it's like, hey, you start with $1,000, you're putting $50 a month, you're going to average roughly, let's just say, a 7% return. I think the S&P over a 10-year average right now is at 8, or maybe even higher over the last course of 6-7 years because the market has done nothing but went up.
Yeah.
But essentially at the same time, it's knowing that you can look at this calculator and kind of look into the future of 20-30 years and see what roughly your account value should be at. And I think that's
Wow.
important because I mess with those accounts all the time. I think I was giving an example to my brother, and I don't quote me exactly on the numbers because I just don't have it pulled up, and I
Yeah.
apologize for not being prepared in that light. But ultimately it was like I think if a kid started with $10,000 and they don't contribute, let's just say, like, I think it was like 9 or 10 years old, and they don't contribute any more money to that account but they never touch it till they're 65.
Yeah.
I think they retire close to a millionaire.
Oh my goodness.
So, essentially,
10K?
yeah, with 10,000. So that's the beauty of compound interest, right?
Yeah.
And, just looking at those calculators and looking at, what these returns may be and looking at, into the future of understanding what you could potentially have, motivate you a lot more to just put that money away, right? And understand that, it might not be a lot, but, every dollar counts.
So the traditional IRA and the Roth IRA have compound interest.
Yeah, well, every vehicle that you invest in is going to have the compound interest, right? You buy into an investment, you hope that it grows, right? But if you don't touch that investment as it grows, there's more and more that's invested in it.
Yeah.
So, if you have, let's say, for an example, $100,000, right? You make 6% roughly. That's $6,000 on that 100.
Yeah.
You have $200,000, but you make 6%. That's $12,000. Yeah. So you see, as you have more money, it's easier to make more money through an average return over the course of 10, 15, 20 years. People want to understand that there is risk involved in these investments, and it's not just all rainbows, throughout the course of 20, 30 years. There's some times where you're going to look at these accounts and, they're not necessarily doing as well as what you want them to. But you have to understand, if you don't necessarily liquidate those accounts or use that money for any other cause, you will see it come back. The market is like a roller coaster. What comes down has to come up. What comes up has to go back down, right? Essentially since 2008, we really have only seen the market do nothing but go up. And I always speak to 2008 because that was a big financial crisis where, people lost from top to bottom anywhere from 25 to 40%, depending on how they were invested in the market.
Trust me, I remember. My mom thought she was going to lose her house in 2008, and it's 2025, man. She still owns her house. So.
Yeah. So, and there's a lot of people that did lose their house, based on, the loans and what was going on with the companies that are offering mortgages and that whole fiasco, right? And that's a whole nother topic. But, bottom line is that, as we were in, a housing market crash and people were, foreclosing on their houses and all these different things, a lot of people lost a lot of money in the market. And there's nothing worse, going to a retirement age and thinking that you have money to retire and you end up losing a significant amount that year. It affects the way that you feel about retirement, right? And that's important to understand too, because, I get that as in, why a lot of people don't invest, because they just don't understand it. And they've heard a lot of people lose money too. So a lot of people, it's an education thing where they just didn't know that they had the option to invest, or they just don't believe in the stock market. And one of the best investors in the world, Warren Buffett, says the best: everybody can get rich, but nobody wants to get rich slow. And what he really means by that is it doesn't take a lot of money every month on a month-to-month basis to wake up one day and, have a significant amount put away. But a lot of people just aren't even doing that on the smallest spectrum of whether it's, $20, $30, up to maybe even $100. And I think we all have, different things that we put money towards, but not realizing that, how important this is for us later. And, in my job specifically, going back to kind of my title, it's like every day I'm able to look into the future of, 6 or 7 retirees and understand, what decisions they made to put themselves in a good retirement or a bad retirement. And that allows me to be able to understand what's important. And that's why I appreciate you guys having me on this podcast, because I can understand, maybe even it's just one person, taking this and understanding that I'm not taking advantage as much as I should, when it comes to my financial vehicles that my company's offering, or, going and set up my own. Even if your company doesn't offer one, you can go to some of these big financial institutions and set up your own IRA, 401k, Roth IRA as well. And, a lot of people overcomplicate it. A lot of the times you can call them and tell them what you're looking for, and they'll walk you through the whole process, and they'll even ask you what your risk tolerance is, which, you guys might look at it as, I don't really know what all that means, but essentially what they're asking you is, how much are you willing to, risk on a year-to-year basis when you see your investments? Do you want to be conservative and see gradual growth, or do you kind of want to go the ups and downs? So, maybe 10 years from now, you have a whole heck of a lot more money. It takes money to make money, but you also have to take a little bit of risk to make the money that you want. Right. And that's kind of the stock market. And some people are, concerned with that risk. And, kind of go on to the next question too. I'm studying to get my securities license. So, none of this is financial advice by any means. Until I get my securities license, I can't give people actual financial advice. Just doesn't take away from the experience that I've been able to grow ever since college, because this is all I know. 7 years later.
Hey, I have a question.
Yeah.
Speaking of college, what was your degree in?
Yeah, I actually have a communications and psychology degree. So
wow.
yeah.
I have a communications degree as well.
Yeah, and I think it helps in a lot of different, industries to be able to just explain to people.
So nothing financial.
No. That's a big.
Did you take some finance courses?
I mean, you took accounting, you took, some business classes, things like that.
Intro to business.
Yeah.
Right? Communications. Yep.
Things like that. But as far as the business major, I didn't have a huge focus in business academics through college, but I think essentially, I'm glad honestly I didn't. I learned a lot after college through business, but the first half of college was looking at essentially, really just looking at, how to understand people, how to work with people, and then communicate. Because I think it comes down to education.
Yeah,
If you can break things down in a very, very simple terms, but also let people know that you're knowledgeable and you know what you're talking about, that's
yeah,
half the battle. Because it is tough when you go into an office and you feel like they're talking over your head. You don't understand anything about investing, and
absolutely.
ultimately that concerns you. So that makes you just kind of just run from it and all, right?
Yeah,
Which is unfortunate, bottom line, because people don't understand the value of it,
yeah,
which comes down to just financial literacy. There's a lot of great books, about investing, and I won't recommend any specific one because, people might think that's biased towards certain people and things like that. But I think ultimately there's a lot of great resources out there to educate you on different options that you have out there and why it's important to invest and what's done for people in the past,
yeah.
and start there,
And I just think
you
too,
know.
it's for the books, it's just all about what you know what I'm saying, what caters to you,
Yeah, yeah,
honestly.
yeah,
So
yeah, and that is it is, and everybody else, likes certain opinions. So, someone might focus more on this investment versus this investment, which kind of gets subjective in the world of the financial world by any means, right?
it's just preference.
It's preference, and depending on what you're looking for your retirement, bottom line, right?
Yeah,
Which is super important. So, yeah.